All right. Well, as I said today, we're going to be talking about taking our feedback to the next level with Blackboard Annotate. And we're going to start off by discussing a little bit about what feedback is. After we've done that, we're going to go over some of the Annotate tools that we now have available for you. If you haven't checked it out recently, this year they upgraded the inline grading tool in Blackboard, so it's got a lot more stuff associated with it. It's a lot more robust. Still a little bit of a work in progress, but it does have a lot of interesting tools you can use. And finally, we'll wrap up with just some questions. So while we get started, the first thing I'm going to do is start with a poll. I would like you to take this while I'm typing this in, if you wouldn't mind. Just take a moment to think about what you think feedback is. And give me a second while I type in this poll. All right, thank you for your patience during the delay. So which of the following here do you think best describes feedback? Is it assessment of performance? Is it constructive criticism? Is it an interactive process? Okay, looks like people have changed their mind. All right, looks like we're kind of landing on interactive process and or constructive criticism as a couple of possibilities. Thank you very much. But yes, so first off, really what I did was I gave you 3 different choices about what feedback is. They all are related to feedback. So like assessment of performance for a given task is something you're going to be doing while you're giving feedback, but it doesn't really cover the entire feedback process, right? It's a little more focused, okay? I think it's the same thing can be said of constructive criticism, right? Constructive criticism is part of the feedback process, but it is not the whole of it, okay? And the reason I say that is because really Ostenberg, Henderson, and Mitchell came up with this idea that, or they didn't come up with the idea, but they are coming at it from the direction that feedback is an interactive dialogic process, okay? And essentially what that means is that, I think the operative word here is process, right? It's something that's going to take time, right? It's not going to happen right away. It requires a dialogue to be established, right? So that requires you to sort of establish a relationship of some sort with the person you're giving feedback to, right? And it's interactive, meaning, right, you need to be responsive. So the reason I kind of focused on this is because they identified several attributes of feedback, and while some of them are a little difficult to understand, or not difficult to understand, but a little sort of abstract in a way, I do think it's a good way to sort of think about feedback, right? Is sort of this collection of these attributes. The first one of which is that it's a process, right? I just mentioned that, and that it takes time to develop. Okay, it's not something that happens overnight, right? It's going to require several steps probably, and that's okay, right? It's important to keep that in mind and understand that feedback is never a perfect process, and it's like any other you know relationship you have with a person. It requires some work, it requires some thought, and it does take time to develop. Okay, next is this idea that your feedback needs to be criteria based. Okay, I think a great tool for communicating your criteria to students is through use of a rubric. But basically, this criteria based attribute is sort of based on the idea that there are standards, right? So students need to understand what is expected of them for the assignment or assessment, whatever it is, and you need to be very clear about what's going to be assessed. I think it's easy sometimes to get into a mode when you're teaching if you're trying to correct everything, but I think it's okay to just focus on certain skills or that you're trying to develop in your students. You don't have to cover everything. And that's what, again, a rubric is great for, because, if you're having students write a paper, you may tell them, hey, I want you to pay special attention. This is about learning how to use APA style properly. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. And other things like spelling perhaps maybe wouldn't be something that you would be assessing them on this time, right? And that's easily communicated with something like a rubric. They also say that good feedback requires multiple sources of evidence, and that sort of goes along with the criteria based, in that just because a student makes one mistake doesn't mean it's a problem, right? So what you're looking for are multiple instances of the same mistake, which is an indication that that is something that your student needs to work on. All right. This next attribute, I think, is very important, and it's something that I don't know how much you as an instructor have control over, because feedback being desired by the recipient is a tough one, right? You cannot force someone to take your feedback. They have to be a willing recipient. You do have one thing in your favor, right? This person is taking your class. So I think you can assume that they are there to learn something, and that requires some feedback. But again, you need to really focus on developing a strong relationship with your students in order to ensure that they are going to be willing recipients of feedback you give them. This next one, timeliness, is a big one, right? That and it is something that you can definitely control. Feedback needs, or I should say, quicker is better in most cases. I tend to think of it like training my dog, right? In that, if my dog does something wrong and I don't correct her immediately and I wait, then she doesn't know what she's being corrected for. So it's, obviously with humans, it's different because they have longer memories. But you want to make sure that the feedback is timely, because, if you don't get a student feedback on an assignment until a week or two later, they've probably moved on to other things, so they really don't probably remember everything about that assignment. And also, they could have been using that extra time to sort of work on those feedback things that you identified. So it really is important to get it out faster if you can, but not to rush, right? You want to make sure that your feedback is authentic. You want it to be, and sort of going along with authenticity, is that it needs to be tailored to the individual. You are in the best position of all to know your students. You interact with them So you are in the best position to judge how to give feedback to students. And everybody's going to be a little different, right? Some people are okay with I don't want to say harsh criticism, but tough criticism, right? Just honest, sort of no nonsense criticism. Other people, that is something that they don't react well to. So you want to make sure that you are tailoring your feedback in a way that is, good for the recipient, right? That goes again to sort of the desire and sort of the process. You're building this relationship, right? So again, it's a step, right? Or it's a process, a series of steps. You're going to, learn more about your students as you go on, what works, what doesn't for your students in general and for individuals specifically. And so just, understand that and sort of, give yourself permission to make mistakes, because that will happen. But, as long as you are focused and committed to giving good feedback to your students, they will respond. I believe that, right? We talked about this being a relationship, right? Relationships aren't built overnight, and as your students get to know you better, your feedback, I think, will become more effective. Feedback also needs to be frequent. It's better to give lots of small feedbacks, or like small pieces of feedback, as opposed to some big ones, because by breaking it down into smaller chunks, that allows your learners to focus more on what you're talking about in your feedback and not be distracted or overwhelmed by trying to do too much. I would also like to point out that feedback should be future focused, right? It's all about improvement, right? We have a goal, we're trying to get to that goal, and that's what the feedback is about, right? It's about continual improvement, right? Reaching our goal. This next one, the reciprocal nature of feedback, is something that I also feel is very important. And although Annotate can't necessarily help you much with this, it is very important that you listen to your students. I've always felt that as an instructor, I've think of myself more as a facilitator, and I'm learning too, right? I'm learning how to be a better instructor. I'm learning how to give better feedback to my students. So I have to also be receptive when I hear my students telling me things, right? If they don't, I may think I'm doing something that is, that is just fine, but it may not be the best way to respond to a student. And if a student, is willing to point that out, you need to be responsive to that. This next one is, involving skillful interaction. That kind of goes without saying, right? And what exactly that is tough to pin down, because it's a lot of this is going to be dependent on you as a person and your learners as people, right? And so navigating those sort of ins and outs is something that takes time. It takes experience, right? And you're never, I don't think you're never fully, like, you never reach that point where you can't learn something new. So I would say, stay open to that. And remember, again, that this is a process. So you're learning too. And finally, is this multidimensional idea where that is that your feedback sort of engages learners in more than one way. Okay. Now, unfortunately, Annotate cannot help you address all of these attributes. Okay. But it can certainly help you with timeliness, right? Because Annotate can help you speed up the process of giving feedback, right? It can help you with individualization because it allows you to use some common or preset comments and things like that, but you can also insert individual comments for students, which is a great way to personalize things. It'll help you, again, with the timeliness, that'll help you give your feedback more frequently. Plus, when students are submitting things online and you're grading online, it's pretty much an instant feedback response to the students. Once you post the grades, then they can see what you've said to them. So that kind of helps speed things up. And then it can also help you identify multiple sources of information. Like if you see the student making the same error in multiple places, right? That's an indication that that's something you should address in your feedback, right? Because clearly it's something that the student is missing, right? And needs to improve on. All right, so I know I'm going kind of fast, so I'm gonna slow down for a second and take a break so I can take a drink of water and ask if there are any questions so far. All right, since I do not see any hands going up or anything coming in the chat, nobody's hopping on the mic, I am going to continue to move on. All right, so there are two different views of Annotate, depending, or I should say the Annotate is available in both of our course views, right? The new Ultra course view and the original course view. It works the same in both, but it is arranged a little differently. You can see on the left, or on the left is the Ultra course view, and up above, here, let me grab this. And I know it's hard to see because it's kind of small, but up above here, you've got the grade pill. This is sort of the feedback bubble that if you click on that, you can add written feedback, which is the same stuff that over here in original course view is right here along the right side. So you've got the same overall functionality. It's just that it's just arranged a little differently in Ultra. But if you notice in the Annotate window itself, the tools are the same. So let's start with the Annotate bar. Okay, this is the control center for everything in Annotate. And some of these things I'm not going to talk about simply because they're functions that are common among a lot of softwares. They work a lot of these functions work similar to the way they work in Word or Excel, things like that. So things like this page and the zoom and that kind of stuff, download, search, that kind of stuff, those all work, they're going to work the same as downloading and searching and switching pages in other programs. It's all pretty much the same, so there's no real need to cover that. Okay, but there are a few functions that are really important and really useful. First one is this sidebar over here, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and then on the other side are the annotation tools, and this is where you're going to go to add things to the actual student submissions, so you can add comments, stamps, things like that, which we will be going over in just a moment. So first off, there's this sidebar, right? And this allows you to change or open the sidebar and sort of, it's really a navigation tool as far as the thumbnails go, right? You can click into different pages simply by clicking the page in the sidebar here. You can also click over and create an outline, or click on the annotations tool here, which will actually list all the annotations you've made on the document in the sidebar. That's a great way for you to sort of see if certain things are cropping up more than once. Although I will say that one weakness here is that the annotations part does not include the comments you add. It only includes like stamps or comment, like when you draw in the, like if you circle something in the document or things like that, those are what show up on the annotation side. Okay, so first off, let's talk about our annotation tools. These are your basic freehand drawing tools. By clicking the pen, once you, or I should say clicking over here gives you a few different options, right? You can have the pen, you can do a brush, or you can erase. Excuse me. Once you click on this tool, you will see these other options show up, and this allows you to adjust the color, the fill, the thickness, opacity, that kind of stuff. Again, these work the same as they would in, say, Word or any other similar program. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on adjusting them. Just know they're here. And what that does is that allows you to, say, circle an area inside the assignment to draw attention to it, something like that. Next over here is this ability to insert images and stamps. Now, you can insert images from your computer. I'm not sure exactly why you would use that, but you know, it's there, and I'm sure that you can find a creative way to insert images as feedback. One thing, and I should have mentioned this when I was talking about the drawing tools, but one thing I've used sometimes with students is color coding, and this is especially like during the draft phase of, say, a paper or something. I won't tell them necessarily what the problem is, but I will draw their attention to a paragraph or a section of the paper and say, you know, hey, you've got a grammar error in here or something along those lines. So I'll point to a section and I will tell them, you know, I'm able maybe give them an idea of what type of error is in there, but I will make them find it and correct it. And then we sort of use that as sort of, you know, a jumping off point to start our discussion about feedback and things like that. But again, this is entirely up to you, and you can be as creative as you want. But you can, you know, use this tool to insert images. You can also insert stamps. They have several pre-made stamps that you can choose from, or you can make custom stamps. These are one-offs. You know, again, it's not something you necessarily have to use, but something that is there for you if you would like. I'm not going to talk about the text insert because that is, all you have to do is click that, and that allows you to just basically type text into the document as well. But you can also create lines, arrows, rectangles, things like that. And again, you can adjust the color and thickness just like you could with the freehand drawing tools. All right. Okay, moving on. We're going to talk about the comment function next. And this is probably the one I get the most questions about. And this has actually, it's improved since it first started. There was a little confusion at first because instead of having save down here, it used to say comment. And it is very important to click that save button, because if you don't, any comment you put in here will not be saved. And so when you move on, I mean, it'll look like it's there, but when you move on to the next student submission, any unsaved comments will disappear. So we were having a little problem at the beginning. They have since changed this to a save button, so it's a lot more obvious that you need to click that. But just wanted to point it out so you're aware. But what you do is you simply click this little double dialog box thing up at the top, and then you will click inside your document, or inside the student submission, I should say, and you can see I've got several of them sticking in here. And this puts a comment right, it points to an exact place. This is another great way to give students formative feedback, suggestions. You can tell them, or compliment things, point out what's good. But this is a great way, again, to personalize that feedback as well. Another way to add comments that I really like, and that was sort of the freehand way, is this comment library, or this content library, they call it. This is a real time saver, because what this allows you to do is to create sort of preset comments. So like an example I used here is like if you're teaching students about APA style, right? There are probably some things that are going to be fairly common among your students, right? That they're going to do a lot, right? They will probably miss citations from time to time, or have incorrect headers and things like that. So sort of these common mistakes that students make a lot, you can add comments in your content library and then add them to the paper with just a couple of clicks. So by clicking on this little library icon at the top, you open the content library, and you can either add one of these comments simply by clicking, from your list, you click the three dots and place the comment, and that will place it inside the submission for the student. If you want to add other comments, you click the plus and just type in your comment. Again, this is a time saver. It's not something you're going to want to use for every single comment, but it is good to have some sort of on file for those more common problems, so you don't have to type them out each time. And the final way to add comments is by highlighting in the document. So if you scroll into the student submission and click and drag to highlight, what it'll do is it'll pull up this pop-up menu. And it allows you to do a few things, right? You can highlight that particular piece of text. This is another way to draw attention to for students to a particular area. You can strike through, you can underline, you can squiggle underline, and you can also add a comment, okay? So like if you want to comment on a particular piece of text and not just at a particular point, you can highlight the text you want to, or you want that your comment is going to be focused on, click the comment icon there, add your comment, and then that comment then is associated with that highlighted piece of text. Okay, the other important thing is that you can modify and remove your annotations, okay? And you do that by clicking on the annotation itself in the student submission, which will bring up this little gray bar. On the left side will be the trash can, which you can use to remove the icon, or you can modify it on the right. Now, the choices you get to modify it will be different based on which particular type of annotation you are trying to modify. So these selections over here are going to change, but the trash can is always going to be there. So that's how you remove annotations. It usually gives you a warning. It says, hey, are you sure you want to remove this? And you say yes. Now, one of the things, actually, I forgot to mention, is, and I did talk about the fact that you can modify color and things like that. And that is something that, again, you can use to communicate or to give feedback to your students, like this squiggle underline, right? You can use what Word uses, right? You could squiggle underline something in red if it's misspelled. You could squiggle underline something in green if it's a if there's a grammar error in there, just like that's the same thing Word does. You know, you can create, I mean, there are a lot of different possibilities here, right? You could create a number of different sort of color codes that you could use with students, which is going to be a great way to communicate with them, and it's going to be a time saver for you, because you're going to sort of have this sort of base that you're starting from, so that you can quickly and efficiently add feedback. I think it's something that's very important to always keep in mind as instructors, is that your time is a finite resource. Okay. In an ideal world, yes, we would be able to spend as much time as we needed on each student's assignment to give them just fantastic feedback, but that's not the reality of the situation, right? And it's not just about giving them a great feedback, but it's also about doing it in a manner that is good for you, right? You cannot be spending 20 hours a day giving feedback, right? So this is what Annotate can help you do, right? It can sort of help you streamline this process. All right, now I know I'm pretty much through all of my slides here. I'm gonna stop for just a moment and ask if there are any questions. All right, I'm not seeing anything, so good. One thing I do want to point out is that Annotate and just Blackboard in general is constantly going through some changes. Right now, there's a little glitch in the Annotate function, and files are not displaying correctly. Here, I'm going to show you this. It's pretty easy to get through, but I just want you to be aware of it. Give me a second to switch my screens here. Okay. All right, so if I'm coming in here, excuse me, to my student submission here, I'm going to open this to see if it's going to let me. Uh-oh. Ooh, I seem to have locked up. I hope you guys are not gone. I hope you can hear me. If you can, my computer has frozen up, so give me a few minutes here to try to sort this out. Okay. Shoot. Oh boy. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Is everybody still here with me? Okay, good. All right, cool. I'm gonna try this. Give me just a second. I'm gonna try this screen share again. Hopefully it'll work. So here we go. Okay. All right. Try try one more time here. Okay, I think that's working. Can everybody, looks like you can see that. All right, so here we go. I'm going to open my submission. Oh, it showed up. Okay, what you see, there's this this banner we've got at the top. This is because when student submissions get loaded into this inline grader, it can modify the formatting a little bit. So if you are doing something that where the formatting is an issue or it's format sensitive, there are a couple of things you can do. You can download the original file and look at it that way, or you can instruct your students to save their submission as a PDF first and submit it as a PDF, because we find that that doesn't change the formatting in the Annotate window here. It worked for me this time, but it did not work earlier, so maybe they have already fixed this. But sometimes when you open this up, open your submission up, you'll see this, but you won't see this file displayed. That is a glitch that Blackboard is aware of and they're working to fix. But you can correct that simply by refreshing your browser. So if you don't see the student submission show up in the Annotate window here, simply refresh your browser and it should appear. The other thing too is that they have actually moved this feedback stuff over to the right side. Although it doesn't now, what's going to happen is this side panel here is going to remain fixed in place, so that when you scroll down, you don't lose that. Again, that's something that they're developing. It was supposed to be part of the first release, but for whatever reason, they weren't able to make it happen. So it is on the roadmap for hopefully their next update. But just a quick little demonstration here. Like I said, if I want to add comments, I click here. I'm going to pick, let's say, red, and now I can just come in here and circle things. Okay. If I want to add a comment, I click comment up here, and you'll see my little comment icon up here. Okay, I know this is not a very good authentic. And then if I want to trash that, I've got my trash icon. All right, we do have a few minutes here. I wanted to make sure I left time for questions. If there's something you'd like me to go over again or something you're not clear on, yeah, Leslie?
I had students submit an assignment, and I used this feature this semester, but I had two students who, I don't know how they uploaded their work, or if they just typed in the box, or I'm not sure, but I was not able to access the Annotate feature for just 2 out of the 27 students, and I trying to learn why. So is there any advice on how they submit? When you said you could submit a PDF, will it still open and allow you to use all of the annotation features?
Yes.
Okay.
My guess is that maybe they used the text box to submit text instead of submitting a file.
Okay.
That's a weird little, and I don't like it. I think it's kind of annoying, but that's a weird little quirk.
So I should tell students, do not use the text box, upload a file, and you're recommending preferably a PDF.
Yeah, a PDF is going to make sure that there's no formatting change when it's displayed.
And how does that work with accessibility? Because I've just recently learned or been told that we would be better off posting docs Word documents for accessibility purposes. I've been posting all PDFs because in Blackboard, the way I understand it, Mike,
Oh,
PDFs do not download, they open. Whereas anytime you
right.
do I post, so I'm saying from the other end now, right? But when I post a doc,
Hmm.
then it downloads on somebody's computer. So I've been requiring PDFs for everything. So I'm not dumping stuff all over campus on
Right.
who knows whose computer, right? Thanks for following that. But now I've just been told that that's not proper for accessibility and that we're supposed
Okay.
to use Word
Yeah.
documents. So I'm just curious from the back end, can I require a PDF or yeah.
Well, students, honestly, students can submit multiple files. So
Okay.
that's something too. You
Okay.
could say, please submit as a PDF and, attach your original document if you want. But I think probably the reason they're saying um, Word is so that if a student has so a student can modify things. I think, in a PDF, you can't really
Right.
make any changes.
Which
So,
I thought was the important part of a PDF for all of the
right.
assignments and
Yeah.
syllabi, and so I was just
Right.
confused on that. Okay. Well, thank
Yeah. Well, and if you're like me and you're of a certain vintage, you can remember that it used to be you always save things as PDF
you. Right.
if you submitted them
Exactly.
online. You just had to.
Okay,
So
well, thank you. I think that answers no text box. Do not use text box. Be sure to submit a
yeah,
form.
even if they because if students are writing their paper, say in a Word document, and then cutting and pasting into the text editor, then it's not going to open in this inline editor. It needs to be a file.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'm going to go ahead and